terrible thing and should never have happened. Something snapped, I think, with the policeman, and the other three watching it were, I guess you can't put it in the same category, but it was certainly in a very bad category. And nothing good comes out of that. No, that was a very bad thing.
You know, you've been a champion of opportunity zones. You passed criminal justice reform, had increased funding to historically black colleges. As a property owner, you opened a club that welcomed blacks and Jews at a time when others wouldn't. Does it hurt you to know that some people don't recognize that? And what else could you be doing to help unite the country and heal people?
Well, it does hurt me, and we also have, if you look before the plague came in from China, which should have never happened, they should have never allowed that to happen. But before that happened, we had the best black unemployment rate in the history of our country, more home ownership, more everything. In every way, African Americans were in better shape than they ever were, and they will be again very soon because the numbers are going to start going up very soon. I did it once, now I'll do it again. We created the greatest economy in the history of our country. You know that very well. You were a part of it. And we did something that, frankly, nobody thought was possible, and we'll do it again, and even better with a little time. And you're going to start seeing numbers in September, October that are going to be mind-boggling. I see it already. I mean, it's happening. But yeah, I mean, I would like to have fair press, basically, because the numbers are obvious. They're there. If I don't see it, if I don't go on shows like this and other shows, I won't get those numbers out. But we did the best job in the history. If you look, criminal justice reform, historically black colleges and universities, I funded that on a permanent basis. President Obama didn't do that. President Bush, nobody did it. I took care of it. So many different things when you look. Opportunity zones with, as you know, with our very great senator, and he is indeed a great senator from South Carolina. And Tim's a friend of mine, he's a friend of yours, and he did a great job. And he came to me with this idea. And I said, sounds good, let's give it a shot. Well, it's mind-boggling what happened to that. And it's great, the opportunity zones. We've done so much. I don't get credit for it. But criminal justice reform, you know that, I had no chance of getting done. Everybody tried, nobody could get it, and I was able to get it done. And if you listen to people, it's like we didn't do it. And I was the one that got it done, totally done. And it's a great thing, and people are really happy with it, but the news doesn't treat anything we do fairly. That's why I have to get out and speak for myself.
When I was with the U.S. Press Secretary, Chief Ryan Owens was killed in action. I was in the Oval Office with you when you called his wife. You spoke to her in such a heartfelt way to comfort her. You provided that emotional stability that she needed at the time. Do you think that right now the nation needs you to express that same sort of comfort and healing that some people need to heal?
Right now, I think the nation needs law and order, because you have a bad group of people out there, and they're using George Floyd, and they're using a lot of other people to try and do some bad things. And what we do, and we have it totally under control, but you have Democrat, in many cases, in all cases, Democrat, super liberal mayors. I mean, the mayor of Minneapolis it was disgraceful when I watched that. When I saw cops fleeing a precinct, there's no reason in a million years that should have been done. And we took that mess, that was a total mess. We brought in the National Guard, we took care of it. Now it's very good. If you look at that area, it's very good. So yeah, we need healing, but we also need strength, and we need toughness, and we need law and order. We need it all, but we do need healing.
Will you send in the military to any cities in particular to restore that law and order?
Well, it depends. I don't think we'll have to. We have very strong powers to do it. The National Guard is customary, and we have a very powerful National Guard, over 300,000 men and women, and we can do pretty much whatever we want as far as that. But as far as going beyond that, sure, if it was necessary. We have Antifa, we have anarchists, we have terrorists, we have looters. We have a lot of bad people in those groups. I mean, you watch and you see. Now, if you watch MSDNC, or if you watch, which is one of them, and if you watch fake news, CNN, totally fake news. I mean, I watch. It's almost like these are the most wonderful people on earth. They're not. Right. When you look at the real clips, they're not. There are a lot of bad people, and there are a lot of good people. There's some great people, but there are a lot of really, really bad people in there. And you have a lot of radical left crazy people, and you have people that don't want good for our country. At the same time, we need healing and all of those things, but we need safety in our cities. And when they don't take care of it, we took care of it in Washington, D.C. I said 2 days ago, this is the safest place on earth. We brought in incredible people. They took care of the situation very easily. It was very easy for them. And in Minnesota, as you know, we took care of that situation with their great city. We took care of it very easily. Once they went through 3 days of hell, and I had to say, you got to get them in. Once they came in, it was like a knife cutting butter. It was so easy. But we have other cities they like to hold out. New York is disaster what's going on in New York, and we could help them a lot. They have to ask. If they don't get it straightened out soon, I'll take care of it.
Why did you go to St. John's the other day? What was the message that you wanted to send to people?
So I went there because somebody suggested it was a good idea, and I thought it was a great idea, and it was a great idea. I didn't know if there were people around there or not. Somebody said, oh, they were so peaceful. Well, they tried to burn down the church the day before. It almost succeeded. And the church was badly hurt. And that church was built at a similar time to the White House. Adams was your first parishioner, your first president parishioner. And he was the first, as you know, President Adams, the first president in the White House, from the White House. And a very important symbol, and they tried to burn it down. Then I heard what wonderful people they are. No, they tried to burn down the church. And the military moved them back. I guess they just reported there were no, what would you call them, the rubber bullets or whatever. There was none of that used. They just moved them back. They didn't know until just shortly before that I was going there. Somebody suggested, I said, let's go, let's walk. And we walked from the White House. And I think everything was handled very well. I will tell you, religious leaders loved it. Religious leaders thought it was great. They loved it.
Since you've been president, have you grown in your faith? Do you pray? Do you pray often?
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about religion this week. What does it mean to you?
So I think maybe I have, from the standpoint that I see so much that I can do. I've done so much for religion. The Johnson Amendment, getting rid of it. Mexico City. Nobody thought any of this stuff would happen. 2 Supreme Court justices. And by the way, if the other side, and I call them the radical left, because Biden has gone way left, but he doesn't know where he is. But he's surrounded by people that are put there that are serious radical left. You won't have a Second Amendment. You won't have religious liberty. You won't have anything. This, I used to say the other election, the last election, 2016, that you were a part of, I used to say that that was the most important election. I think it's superseded now because they've gone stone cold crazy, and they will do things that you wouldn't believe, and that includes ending your Second Amendment. It includes open borders where everybody pours in. You know, on the wall that you don't hear about anymore, right? You know why you don't hear? Because it's built. 210 miles is already built, and we're building the rest. By the end of the year, we'll have close to 400 miles, and shortly into next year, we'll have it totally completed. And every mile that we build, you have less and less people. We're setting records for low levels of people coming in, and when they come in, they get taken right out. Nobody's ever had a southern border like what we have right now. It's been an incredible thing. You don't hear about it. The Democrats don't talk about it anymore. But they want open borders. That means drugs. That means human traffickers. That means all of these horrible things. That means people pouring into our country. So the wall has done great. That was very hard to get. I mean, I had a party that was a Democrat party that was so against it. But now you don't hear about it. I think the other reason you don't hear about it is basically they know I'm right. Building a wall, especially once the pandemic came, because if you look at Tijuana, right on the other side of the border, it's one of the most infected places on earth. And we have a wall, and that's a good thing that we have a wall. We built it.
You know, you've talked about the wall and immigration. You've been very tough on crime. You've sent the National Guard out this week. There's a lot of people that want to know if police reforms will help the systemic racism and issues that many black people face in this country. Is that something that you could get behind?
Well, I heard Biden talking about systemic racism in the police department today. And I said, a very simple question. He's been there for 43 years. Why didn't he do something about it? I've only been doing this for 3.5 years. He's been there for 43, 44 years. He was there 8 years as vice president. He had plenty of time. I mean, he was taking a lot of vacations, taking it easy, sending his son over to China to pick up $1.5 billion, sending him to Ukraine where he was paid $83,000 a month and $3 million up front or something. I would tell you, why he had plenty of time. Why wouldn't he do this? This is Sleepy Joe. But now he's talking about systemic racism in the police department. Why wouldn't he have done something about it, Sean?
Right.
He had all the time. So now he says, I'm going to stop. Well, he's there 43 years. He was a senator, in all fairness. That's a very big position. You could do what you want to do. But then he was vice president for 8 years. He hasn't done anything except things that were bad for the black population. Very bad. African-American population was treated very badly by Biden. He didn't know it, and he doesn't know it now, honestly, because I don't think he knows where he is.
Last week, you signed an executive order asking the Federal Communications Commission to look into Section 230 of the Federal Decency Act. The Federal Trade Commission, though, was also part of your executive order. Would you like the Federal Trade Commission to look into these social media platforms in terms of unfair trade practices?
Yeah, you have federal trade and you have federal communications. They can both look into it, but and you don't know that they're not, to be honest with you. So let's see what happens.
Right. Would you? The Department of Justice is also looking into Google because it's many claim that it has a biased search engine. Would you support them filing an antitrust
Well, I think
act?
you have a lot of situations. Look what Amazon's doing to our country. Amazon's destroying all these shopping malls and shopping centers where you have a lot of workers. You go through a beautiful town, you know, Perfect Town, USA, okay? Perfect Town, USA used to have a little store here, a little along the main, Main Street, I guess you'd call it, right? Mm-hmm. These towns are wiped out now. Amazon's doing, I mean, you talk about antitrust. I don't say I'm doing anything one way or the other, but look at what Amazon's doing to our cities and our everything. You talk about antitrust, so we'll see what happens. I'm not telling you I'm doing anything or not doing anything, but there's tremendous damage and the jobs that are being lost and other things. But you look at towns and cities and shopping centers and shopping areas, and it's like they're empty, they're dead, they're like deserts. I think it's a very unpleasant thing. And they have a big tax advantage, because of the taxes. They have a big tax advantage over somebody that's paying rent and has a store and employing a lot of people and having people work. So I think that's something we'd look at too, yeah.
On China, you've been very tough with your tariffs on China as a country. There are some who are saying that because of what President Xi has done in terms of Hong Kong, that he should be personally sanctioned. Is that something that you'd be willing to think about?
I haven't thought of that. No, I haven't thought of that.
How is your friendship with him?
Haven't spoken to him in a while. It was very good. We did the trade deal. It was one of the great deals ever made. China was just ripping off this country. China was taking out 500 billion plus a year for many years. 500 billion, not million, 500 billion. And I changed it around. China, before the plague came in, China, again, should have never let it happen. They should have stopped it at the source, but they didn't. And the whole world was affected so badly, so devastatingly with all that death. Forget about the money, the death. But the ink wasn't even dry on the trade deal when this happened. But China, before the plague, China had the worst year they've had in 67 years. That's because of me. Now, I don't say that with pride, but what's happened is China's been ripping off our country for 30 years, for longer, but for 30 years. The World Trade Organization's been a disaster with respect to China, and so has the World Health Organization, which we've now officially pulled out of. So it's a very, very sad thing has happened with China. But they certainly took advantage of. I mean, they're considered in the world trade. They're considered a developing nation. China's not a developing nation. China is a very powerful nation, and they're developed. And we're all developing nations. We're developing too, I guess, right? I said if China's a developing nation, then we're a developing nation. But by having that status, as you understand very well, because you understand trade, by having that status, they have tremendous advantages over the United States. And it's not acceptable. And I let them all know it a long time ago, and it's happening now.
Speaking of the World Health Organization and what's going on here, we haven't heard a lot from Dr. Fauci in the last little while. A lot of these mayors and governors were all talking about social distancing and not gathering in large groups a couple weeks ago. I haven't heard a lot about social distancing and gathering since all of these large protests and riots.
Isn't it interesting?
Does that mean that social distancing is over? Does that mean that we don't?
No, it's not over. It's like you keep away. Like, I'm glad we're a little bit closer than you. I mean, I've done some interviews with a person so far over you don't even know what they're saying. But no, it doesn't mean that. And people are getting, we want to be back to normal, but it's a little bit soon. But I watch these protesters, and they're the ones that are all claiming social distancing, everything else. It's really interesting. They do that, and then they're jumping on top of each other by the thousands when they're screaming and ranting and raving, which is not a good thing. I mean, we're going to have to see how that works out. It's a very bad thing. But very interesting with these liberal mayors, liberal Democrats, and governors, how they're tough as hell on keeping people locked up in their houses. But when it comes to ending the crime and the stores being broken into and the looting, and by the way, people being hit over the back of the head, the man in Dallas that was kicked unmercifully, I never saw anything like it. He's being kicked and beaten up and probably going to die. You look at all of this stuff, the woman who gets hit by a 2x4, nobody ever mentions that. But you look at what goes on. But the liberal mayors, they keep you locked up. But when it comes to the looting and everything, they're very weak on crime. But I think they're going to lose an election because they are weak on crime. I watched Joe Biden talking about crime the other day. He's so weak on crime, you'll never stop the problem. And I stop it. Look, I stopped it in Minneapolis, real fast. We insisted on the National Guard. It's up. It was brutal. They were, as you know, we said, took over the police department, took over the precinct. They took it over. Everybody, the cops were running. Those cops don't run. They were told to leave. They should never happen. That was a horrible signal. Super liberal mayor. He was crying. He was crying. Isn't that nice? But the mayor can't cry in cases like that. So we have a very different attitude on things. I am law and order. They're not. And if they're not for law and order, you're going to lose the country.
You've always been a tough negotiator. Since you've been president, who's the toughest person that you've had to negotiate with?
Well, I think the hardest are the, I say, okay, people always ask, who's the toughest? Is it Russia? Is it China? Could it be North Korea? Who's the toughest, sir? I say, the toughest is the United States of America, because we have people on the other side that are vicious, and I think they're more vicious in many respects than any of the leaders I deal with. Look what they put us through. A phony Russian witch hunt, a phony impeachment that was thrown out like dogs. We won in the House 196-0 with the Republicans. Not one Republican. Never happens with the Republicans. And in the Senate, it was 52.5 to a half. When you think of that, that was Mitt Romney, a real winner. You know, he still hasn't gotten over the fact that he got destroyed by Barack Obama. I always tell Mitt Romney, if you would have fought this hard with Obama, you could have won that race, okay? I could have won that race easier than beating crooked Hillary Clinton. It would have been easier. But we have to have a country that's unified. But the most difficult people to deal with are the Democrats, because sometimes I think they don't love our country. And that's a very sad thing.
You have a picture of your dad right behind your desk. You've always spoken fondly of your father, Fred. If he could see you now as President of the United States, what do you think he'd say?
Well, he always had great confidence in me, but I don't think he ever saw this was something that I was going to do. One day I said, let's do it. We did it, and I won.
He always thought you'd be a great businessman, but the idea of running the free world.
He was always good. Look, I had a great business and did really well with my business, and I loved it. But I said, if you think about it, Biden and Obama, don't forget, Obama campaigned against me the last time. I think in a certain way harder than Hillary Clinton. I think he actually campaigned harder than Hillary. But he was all over the place. You remember that? He was flying all over on Air Force One campaigning against me. And Biden, I'm only here because of them, because they did such a bad job. I said, somebody's got to change this around. China was killing us. They were all killing us. I'm only here because of Joe Biden and Obama.
Yeah. I've seen you and the First Lady interact. She's such an important part of your life. How much do you rely on her to get feedback on messaging and decisions that you make?
So she's treated unfairly, but the people love her. Yeah. The people love her. When I make a speech, they have signs. We love our first. All over. You've seen hundreds of signs. We love our First Lady. They have sometimes pictures of high heels. It's beautiful. They love Melania. They really do love her. She's a very elegant woman. She is a very confident woman in herself. She's very confident in herself. She doesn't have to get off an airplane and go crazy waving, and they love that. They love, she doesn't, oh, wow, and start going crazy. She's doing a great job.
Do you
The
rely on
people
her?
like
Do you rely on
I
her?
do. She's got great judgment. Great judgment. I do. I listen to her. She's got a very good way, very calm. She's a very calm person, and she's got a great judgment about things. She had great judgment on the Russian witch hunt. She knew immediately. She said, "You never did anything wrong. What is that?" She's got, something very special. And people see that, and they like her a lot.
They do. So you talked about, Jeff Sessions being a mistake. Is there any other mistakes that you think that you've made, or people that you shouldn't have hired, or that you regret?
Well, I've made a lot of great moves. I've hired some great people. You know some of them, but we have some great people in government. No,
I hope
Jeff
I'm
Sessions
I'm on the bad list, right?
No, you're on a good list. You did a very good job, and you're doing very good now, and you did very well on Dancing with the Stars.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I think a lot of our fans were out there. I don't know if you were quite as good as your result, but
No, I think
we'll leave
your
that.
support was better than my dancing.
I think you had a lot of great support. Well, that's because people like you and respect you, but
Thanks, sir.
not necessarily as a dancer, but that's okay. But no, Sessions was a mistake, a big mistake for me, and this stuff should have never happened. It's now coming out that it should have never started. They had no evidence, they had no proof, they had no nothing.
Has anyone surprised you, though, to go the other way? Is there someone that you brought into your administration? You weren't from politics. You'd been a businessman, a successful reality TV star. You had all these other things, but you didn't know a lot about politics in the hiring sense.
Right.
Has someone come into your administration that's been a superstar?
Yeah, I have. I think I have numerous people that are superstars. I don't want to go over it now because then I'll leave somebody out and they'll say, "Oh," but I have numerous people. They're doing a fantastic job. Look, I'm already partially through rebuilding our economy for the second time. We're going to have an economy very soon. Not so. People would say, "Will it be in 10 years?" It'll be soon. It'll be next year. We're gonna have a phenomenal year next year, unless a guy like Biden wins and he wants. They want to raise everybody's taxes through the roof. What's that all about? You'll kill it. You'll totally kill what will be soon another golden goose. I built it once, and remember, artificially closed. If we didn't do that, we would have lost 2.5 million people. 1.5, 2.5. We would have lost anywhere from 10 to 20 or 25 times more people than we lost. We did the right thing, but now it's time to open. But we have a lot of people that are really good. Yeah, a lot of people of superstar status. I would say that's true.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate you joining Newsmax.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
We say, and I ask you to say with us, lift up your voices in this great meeting in the heart of England. And to all the world, a message, England lives and marches on.